With just a spritz of water, grow your Godzilla today. Hey, how's it going, guys? We're here with the latest S.H Monsterarts release. This is definitely my favourite, the 1989 Godzilla from the Godzilla vs Biollante movie. So if you've been following my channel, I did a review for the special colour release for Biollante earlier this month. So if you haven't checked that out, there's a link in the description below, or I'll check a linky card thing in the corner up here. So yeah, be sure to check that out. You can see on the back of the box here, you've got Biollante vs Godzilla, as well as an extra set of images showcasing the Godzilla himself. If you are new to the Monsterarts line or Tamashii figures in general, one thing to keep note is that they have the Tamashii quality sticker on the front, and it's a good way to distinguish between a legit or a bootleg figure. And there isn't too many bootlegs floating around for Monsterarts. There's some here and there, but it's not quite as prolific as other figure lines, which is quite good. Especially if you buy straight away, generally be no issues there. So yeah, let's jump in, unbox him and get a closer look at his sculpting and articulation. And here he is in all his glory, straight out of the box. I haven't moved any part of his body yet, so we'll get into the articulation a bit shortly. But first, let's just have a quick look at his overall sculpt and detailing. And yeah, first impression, straight out of the box, I think he looks really nice. He really does look like the 89 Godzilla that personally I love. He's definitely probably my favourite looking Godzilla out of them all. Second, maybe Shin? So yeah, if you're a fan of the suit in general, I think you should be pretty happy with him. The detailing all around his legs, the sculpting is what you'd expect from a Monsterarts figure. Looks really nice. His hands look really nice and beefy too, with some nice claws. And then yeah, the detailing around the teeth and eyes looks really good, especially his eyes. We'll zoom in a bit closer to that shortly. But a couple of things to point out is obviously the fins that go all the way down. You do have a nice colouring, the grey there, the lighter on the tips, and then kind of blended in with the darker grey as well, which is nice. One of the things is though, on the very top here, you kind of have some harsh light grey colouring, then it kind of stops when it joins from the neck to the body. It would have been quite nice if that was a bit more of a smoother transition. That's something that kind of really sticks out to me at this point. I'm not really sure if it's just a bit too much paint bit overrun there, or if they're all going to be like that. You'll also notice the lovely gold colouring that they've done with the claws as well, and there is shading on the feet claws too, which we'll get a closer look when we check out the articulation, which we can do now. So for articulation, let's start at the very head. We can move our way down. Now keep in mind this is straight out of a box. Haven't moved them at all yet, so it may still be a bit stiff. But generally speaking, with most of these figures, when you've moved them around a little bit, they should free up a bit more. But already he's got some lovely head tilt action going on, which is great. And his mouth should be able to open up. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so his mouth opens up really wide. And yeah, that looks really good. For his back tilting stomach action, he's got, yeah, definitely maybe about 10mm of articulation front and back, which isn't too bad. It kind of reminds me quite similar to the 54 Godzilla. Now unfortunately I haven't really had a good close look at the other Godzilla figures in this range, like the 95 and so forth, so it's a bit hard for me to really compare to a lot of those ones. So if you do have that one, please let me know in the comments below what the articulation is like, and especially when you get this guy yourself, how they do compare, because I'd love to find out myself. Next up, let's check out the arms. So yeah, we've got a little bit of motion there. There we go, you can swivel his arm up and around. So yeah, that's actually not too bad. Since it, as I was mentioning, is new, it's still pretty stiff, but you can get some nice range there. And then how about the elbows? A little bit of range there, not too much in the way of elbow movement, at least not at this stage. So for his hand, he does have some nice swivel motion there in his hand, and it does go back and forward as well. Not a huge amount of motion in his elbow region, which is a little bit of a shame. A bit more motion there would have been quite nice. But when you do move each individual area by itself, you do get some range going on. Now if we go down to the waist here, as we saw before, it does have some motion forward and back, and he's got a little bit of twisting range as well. Nothing too much, just a few mil on either side. For his leg and hip, he's separated into 1, 2, 3 parts. So this part is actually a bit more of a rubbery material, so it's a bit softer, so it does have some flex, which is quite nice. And you can get the legs kind of splitting out by a decent range. Again, these swivel around quite freely actually, it's quite nice to move. The 2019-2021 Godzillas, due to their shape and design, there was a bit more restricted. I think having this extra flap there is helping to give them that fluid motion going around. His knee and lower legs move extremely well, no real issues there. So far it's mostly just his elbow joints which is a bit stiff. And his feet, he's got the shin part and the lower foot. The lower foot part, yeah, a bit more restricted in terms of its motion. Mainly moves on the middle of his shin and by his knee. Now moving down to one of my favourite parts of these figures, and that is the tail. He's definitely got a lot of different points of articulation down here, which is nice. And yeah, so far, yeah, it works really well. Yeah, as you can see, it moves quite a bit. And he seems to have a main joint around here, but that's about between the 4th and 5th section. It definitely comes out a bit more. Whereas each other part, while it still moves, is a little bit more limited. But you can move him all the way down to basically the last 4 parts down by his tip of his tail. But yeah, that feels really nice actually. Fluid. Makes you really excited to see what the Godzilla SP figure is going to be like with his massive tail, which is releasing later this year. So now that we've checked out the articulation, I just want to get in a bit closer to the head so you can see the detailing in there. Maybe a little bit hard to see through this video, so I'll also be taking some close-up photos that I'll be posting at the end of the video as well as on Instagram, so be sure to check those out as well. But looking really close, in his eye here, he's got a lovely brown colour with a dark shiny black pupil, which looks really nice. And then again for his teeth and his mouth, the colouring and shading there is really nice, and the tongue actually moves slightly, not a huge deal, but it isn't completely fixed down the bottom, which is really nice. The claws on this guy is pretty damn nice, eh? They've got a pretty good gold kind of yellowy colour, which stands out really well. And then he's got the nice colouring and shading on his toe claws as well, which is really cool. And a close-up look of the fins. As you can see, as I was mentioning earlier, he's got the darker grey colour underneath with the lighter grey painted over top, and which gives him a nice depth and detail on the inner parts of his fins, which is quite nice. And this continues all the way down his spine and tail. Before we jump into the pros and cons for the 89 Godzilla, I wanted to show a bit of a size comparison between him and Biollante. Yeah, I think looking at these two together, they look really nice. I feel like maybe in the movie Biollante was slightly bigger compared to Godzilla, but beyond that, yeah, in terms of a figure display and the posable figures, I feel like they've done a good job of matching these two figures up, and they look really nice together. So yeah, I think overall pretty happy with the sizing of them. What do you guys reckon? Let me know in the comments below if you think the Godzilla is a bit too small or big. But yeah, overall I think looking pretty damn good. If you can, try and hunt down Biollante. Yeah, not the cheapest Monsterarts figure out there, and he'll probably be going up in price as well now that we've got the Godzilla. Okay, so we've had a good look at his articulation, sculpting and everything, as well as his size comparison with Biollante. So let's go over some pros and cons for the 89 Godzilla release. Straight up with the pros, the tail articulation is really nice, it moves easily, it's really fluid. The leg articulation is really good too, along with his mouth. I'm pretty happy with his overall aesthetic, and he definitely does remind me of the 89 Godzilla, which is fantastic since he is my favourite, as I've mentioned earlier. I do quite like the extra fin parts here, and it does kind of make it a bit easier to articulate since it is kind of that loose rubber opposed to being something that's very hard. Going on to some of the cons now. The articulation of the elbows and arms is still pretty lacking, and that's something that is pretty common throughout most of the Monsterarts lines. I mean, I do understand why with the sculpting and design of them, but it'd be pretty cool if they can come up with a way to give them a bit better range of motion. The other con for me is the weathering is either a bit too heavy on the top here, or it's just a bit light on the bottom part. Not really sure. I need to have a look at some other these figures on display in some shops, see what those ones look like. But if they blended this in a bit better, I think that would have been really nice. And the other only con would be that since it is a Monsterarts, they're generally pretty light or lacking on accessories. It would have been really cool to get some type of blast, or maybe a hand that you can switch out to use with Biollante where he's being pierced by one of the thorns. Or something along those lines that would have been quite cool. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this release, if you're hyped for him or not, if you've got him on pre-order, or you're just going to play it by ear and see if you find him in store. So yeah, the next Monsterarts release is going to be Gigan, so there will be a review for him. So if you enjoy this, please do like and subscribe, and also Mechagodzilla and the Godzilla SP will be coming later this year as well. So yeah, for more images, check him out at the end of this video and on Instagram. Again, thank you very much for watching. Cheers!